Chapter 9. More on the leftist plan. Physically attacking America in conventional ways was always thought to be decidedly impossible. At least it has been that way ever since we became a major world power circa 1898. But as it turns out, our enemy doesn't really have to engage us militarily. They don't have to land hundreds of thousands of armed forces on our coast in the style of the World War II Operation Overlord. They only have to bribe, undermine, and eventually subvert our government leaders, and corrupt our most basic systems and institutions through patient, relentless propaganda, and putting their operatives in the right places in government and private industry at the right times. Destroy the national patriotism, morale, and morality of the masses through false teachers and false prophets, and we could fall apart like a sandcastle at high tide. In other words, it's more or less like what's happening now. For example, they only needed to get a senile old puppet that can't always speak in complete sentences, often slurs the words he does try to pronounce, doesn't always know where he is, what state he's in, or what he's doing, can't remember what office he's campaigning for, can't tell the difference between his wife and his sister, doesn't remember the name of the Pentagon or his own defense chief, tries to shake hands with people here and there, can't find his way off a stage without help, and couldn't attract enough people to his campaign rallies to fill a phone booth, let alone win a national election. In summary, they wanted a man who will sign anything put in front of him, whose only skill set is using the power of his office to line his and his family's pockets, and whose promises are about as meaningful as word you scrape off your shoes at the dog park. Then all our enemies had to do was finish corrupting and confusing him with some shiny new money. Hang him up on a nail in a closet somewhere out of sight for a few months. Then incorporate an equally corrupt media to sway the election for him, and use high-tech machines that illegally change the votes of we the people, and they could take total control of our levers of political power without firing a shot. And all it cost them was a few decades of deliberate calculating and energetic organizing, perfecting and applying the art of disinformation to dupe the American voters, including brainwashing naive young people, seizing controlling the means of distributing information, and a few billion fiat paper dollars invested in very well-planned ways while we Americans were lulled to sleep at the wheel. Then they used the sock puppet president to nominate other radicals to important positions in government, and it is fait accompli. Sound familiar? Let's look closer. Because of their willingness to lie, cheat, steal, and fake the suicides of select people who could expose them, they are now in position to use our own military to do their bidding. When Fox News reported contact with a whistleblower who claims the administration is using our own armed forces to transport illegal aliens into the country through Laughlin Air Force Base in Del Rio, Texas, some counterclaims were that the reason was not to redistribute the migrants around the country, but to relieve the burden of processing from overloaded border stations. More disinformation. If Biden hadn't opened the border to suck up to Democrat donor George Soros, the Border Patrol wouldn't have become engaged in processing illegal migrants, and there wouldn't be a burden at the border anyway. Whether you call it shifting the processing burden or a violation of established immigration law, the net result is still the same. Millions of illegal aliens are being redistributed around the country, especially in what are called battleground states where the Democrats have a harder time winning an election. As a career military officer, it crossed my mind that if the military is being used to help the leftists import illegal aliens instead of simply relieving the border processors, what is it that causes such an onslaught? If the Biden administration hadn't encouraged this mass migration by canceling the Trump administration's Remain in Mexico policies, paying contractors to stop building the border wall, and promising a policy of not deporting anybody, we wouldn't have the problem. Members of the military do tend to follow orders, but are they forgetting they don't have to follow illegal orders? And participating in a violation of federal immigration law would qualify as an excuse to refuse to follow such orders. Wait a minute. Isn't I was just following orders the same excuse used by the Nazis at the war crimes trials in Nuremberg, Germany at the end of World War II? Perhaps history does repeat itself. On April 22, 2020, the Monroe News and Daily Telegram published an excellent letter by Connie Webb. She wrote about the socialist practices Democrats are trying feverishly to put in place, supposedly meant to protect us from COVID-19, and she mentioned all the money they needlessly wasted. She suggested this is the kind of socialist system the Democrats want to put in place to replace the system that made America the strongest and most prosperous nation in history. Make the comparison. Under our previous system, institutions, policies, and leadership, we were the leader of the free world. Under the leadership of Marxist socialists working Biden's mouth and making his decisions for him. Look what we have become since 2021. Doesn't this prove that socialism is a total failure? I agree with what Connie Webb said, but she may not have gone far enough. Especially since it is becoming increasingly clear that the COVID vax doesn't always work, and too many cases are coming to light that show it can be unhealthy. An Air Force doctor, Lieutenant Colonel Tharis Along, reported to the Pentagon that several young pilots who should be in the peak of health and prime of life have died of sudden cardiac problems after getting the COVID vaccination. And they aren't the only ones.